Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to today's reflections today on this Saturday, the 3rd of September 2022. I hope you are well wherever you are tuning into this from and things are going well for you. However, I would like us to spare a thought before I go any further for the people of Pakistan. At the moment, Pakistan, about a third of Pakistan is underwater, and it has been for the past couple of weeks or so, at least, maybe a bit longer. And this is because Pakistan at the moment is experiencing unprecedented levels of flooding. A lot of people have lost their homes. A lot of people are in dire straits as a result of this. So if you can, if you're in a position to do so, please donate to the charities such as Minaj Welfare Foundation or the Disasters Emergency Commission, who are making funds and aid available to the people who are being affected by this in Pakistan. I'm not doing this because I'm being sponsored by anybody, but at the same time, it is a human duty to support our brothers and sisters wherever they are in the world, whoever they are, whatever their religion is, who are going through crises like this. That is a human responsibility, and it shouldn't be about just who is sponsoring people or anything. Sometimes it should just be humanity that should win through. So I hope if you can spare a thought for them, keep them in your prayers, and if you can donate to those genuine charities that are helping the people in Pakistan at the moment. Today, I would like to read to you from this wonderful book that I've occasionally read from before, called Defending Truth by Mawlana Shaykh Nazim. And it's one of Mawlana Shaykh's older books published by Thyra Quinsel in December 1997. Really special gem. I won't make these again. And I'm going to read from page 38, The Secret of Life. Oh, what a title, The Secret of Life. Who is looking for the secret of life? Everybody's looking for the secret of life. So these are Mawlana Shaykh Nazim's reflections on the secret of life. The spiritual world and the material world are never separated. They are both, in one case, just like it is impossible for a nail to be separated from a finger, from a nail to be separated from a finger. They are that connected. People who deny spirituality know nothing about mankind or about the reality of life, about the secret of life. We are not living beings today, but tomorrow or the next day we might not be alive anymore. We are living beings today, but tomorrow or the next week or the next month or the next year, we might not be alive anymore. When you think about this, you have to reach a thought. What was it that made this body move yesterday and not today? What made it live yesterday and not today? So, you know, when you see a person who has passed away, or even an animal, what was it that made them alive 1 minute and not alive the next? Have you never reflected upon that? Yes, we know they are alive and they're dead. But what is it that makes them alive or makes them dead? When you look at the corpse of an animal even, let alone a human being, it is quite different from when it is alive. And I don't just mean that it's not moving, but it just, there's something about it just doesn't feel the same anymore. I know when my dad passed away and I looked at his body, it's his body. but he's no longer my dad. My dad's remains. And obviously we have to, be respectful in how we bury and all the rest of it, the funeral and stuff. But for me, when I look, my dad's no longer there anymore. It's like an empty shell. Returning back to Mawlana Shaykh Nazim's reflections. It is the secret of life. There is something hidden which enables people to do every action. Until today, no one has been able to see or catch this secret power. The secret of life which gives people energy. No one has ever seen how this secret power gets into the body of the baby in the womb of the mother. No one can catch the escaping secret power of someone who is dying. That secret power is beyond our senses and beyond our knowledge. Oxford is a huge university city. What do they say about the life of man? What do they know about that? What do they know about death? Nothing. They are not interested to look into the secret of life and the secret of death, even though this is the most important point of knowledge. I think that is, with all due respect to Mawlana, that is slightly unfair. There are those who investigate it, but I know what he means. It's the perspective, the perspective they're going from. They're looking for a materialistic answer. And of course, how can you find a materialistic answer for something that's spiritual? I mean, they are investigating, was it telomeres or something? Something within the DNA of a human being, as the cells reproduce over time, these strands get smaller. They investigate things like that, and they investigate, like these water bears, these tardigrades that can live for an incredible amount of time, even though they're little tiny microscopic things. They do that, but does that really answer the question? It's almost a bit like my reflections. I was always fascinated with science when I was young. Never thought I'd go into religion. I thought it would be a scientific pursuit that I would take as my career throughout my life, but wasn't to be. And one of the things I noticed with science is it can often explain how, but not why. It's like there's different depth of question. The science can explain the surface. The science can explain the water cycle. Why, not why, but how the water evaporates from the ocean, forms clouds and rains. Can explain how these trees in my Facebook picture can grow up to the sky. Can explain the photosynthesis. Can explain all this detail, but then they never ask why. Why is it so complicated? Why is it so incredibly more intricate and detailed and fascinating than even the first people who started studying this realized, or even the people who studied like the evolution and stuff realized? So that's one of the things, scientific approach, at least in the way that it's often pursued, it tends to look at the how. And what is the how? The how is the materialistic aspect of it. It's the physical aspect of it. There are some exceptions to this, such as now there are scientists who are investigating metaphysics and quantum theory and things like this, which delve into some reflections and thinking which is a bit different. But a lot of science, certainly through the 20th century, the last century, it was very materialistic, and this still forms the basis and the bulk of much of the scientific understanding that we have today. So I think this is what Mawlana is referring to here. And he says, how does a person come to life and how does he come to death? Life and death. All sciences and the knowledge of mankind stops right there. There is only one source which can explain it: heavenly knowledge. Only heavenly knowledge can teach us the secret of life, the secret of death, and the secret of being human. Positive knowledge cannot deal with it. It can only experiment and declare that is all. Positive knowledge has very clear limits, but that is all these huge universities deal with. They are in actual fact preventing the reality of creation and the reality of the Creator, who has countless names for himself. They even say that it is forbidden to mention the name of God in the university. Well, it's not true in my university, but I guess there must be some where that is the case. It is forbidden to write the name of God in any book dealing with positive knowledge. They have such strong arguments to prevent it. If any professor would mention God, he would probably be summoned to the head of the university, who would tell him to go to church, to a mosque, or to a synagogue with such subjects. It is understandable that they do not want to deal with heavenly knowledge, because it is very difficult to combine it with positive knowledge. Positive knowledge will always be in limits. It is a mind production. But heavenly knowledge is a production of the heavens. It has no limits. Universities should at least admit that they only produce knowledge about how to arrange physical lives. At the same time, they should point out that beyond positive knowledge, there is no such knowledge which cannot be dealt with using the same methods. There is so much knowledge which cannot be dealt with using the same method. So, yes, of course, they should acknowledge that there are limits to how, to their methodologies. That if you have certain methodologies, that they can be very useful for confirming a lot of things, but those methodologies have their limits. And it's important to understand that. I mean, it's even part of science, if it's done properly, that when you propose your theory, you also propose what can actually discredit it. When you propose your hypothesis, it's a hypothesis before it becomes recognized as a theory. And you're supposed to include in that hypothesis things which you've thought about that, if they're discovered to be true, would render your hypothesis untrue or not the best explanation. It's supposed to do that. And of course, heavenly knowledge is, you can't quantify it. But at the same time, those who deal with it know that there is something to it. And it's hard, because if you have a paradigm where you've never really dealt with this area of understanding and perspective, and you've only been taught the scientific methods, then it is very hard to get your head around, let's put it that way. I know when I first encountered spirituality, it was very difficult for me, because I'd been so much trained within that scientific way of thinking. But at the same time, I know it has helped me. I know Islam and Sufism has helped me, and helped me to get over certain things and to be a much more peaceful, calm, and balanced human being. Science never was able to give me that. even though science has given me an awful lot of understanding of many different areas. But it has its limitations. And maybe it is partly because there are some things that possibly could be studied by the sciences, but they're not always given that focus. And of course, there are reasons for that as well, because at the end of the day, universities want to produce students that have useful qualifications that they can actually turn into a career. And I say that, and I think, well, there are actually universities now that have courses on things like Klingon language and stuff, which I'm not sure how useful that is. But at the same time, as much as I'm a fan of Star Trek, but at the same time, still by and large, the idea of universities is to train people that they can actually pursue a practical career. Perhaps they don't see the money in it. So there's an issue of values there. Maybe if the value can be established, then it would make that easier. If you, so they cannot be brought, so where are we? We should point out that beyond positive knowledge, there is so much knowledge which cannot be dealt with using the same methods. They cannot be brought into the circle of positive knowledge. If you try to do it, you'll be like someone who wants to bring the moon from the sky to the earth to have a look at it. It is impossible, which is why it is a very stupid idea to try to bring heavenly knowledge into the area of positive knowledge. This is the main problem arising between scientists and religious people. It is a never-ending dispute because the scholars of positive knowledge want to bring the moon down, check it, and then give their opinion about it. They want to bring everything into the area of positive knowledge. Beliefs cannot come inside that area because you are dealing with the unseen, which you have to believe in. You cannot reach such knowledge with your physical being. You cannot touch these heavenly beings and this heavenly knowledge. If you want to bring something into the area of positive knowledge, it will be like taking a photograph or a drawing and saying that it is like the original. A photograph cannot be like the person it is portraying. It is only a symbol. You can take a picture of the moon or sun, but you cannot bring it into the laboratory. They can judge subjects within their own area, not beyond. It is one of the biggest mistakes of the 19th century. Since the 17th century, scholars of positive knowledge have declared that anything which cannot enter the Since the 17th century, scholars of positive knowledge have declared that anything which cannot enter their microscope does not exist. And think about it, how ridiculous is that? I mean, if you can put something under a microscope, and a microscope, obviously here, it doesn't necessarily mean a microscope, but some scientific instrument, something which you can observe in a quantifiable way, you can prove it. But it doesn't mean that if you can't put something under an instrument which can make quantifiable measurements, that it doesn't exist. It means you cannot detect it. And there is a difference between not being able to detect something or not being able to measure something and it not existing. So for instance, even the things which come into the realm of positive knowledge, there are things like black holes, for instance, which we know exist within the cosmos. There is enough evidence to prove that they exist, but they are incredibly difficult to measure beyond that. Now, of course, science is coming up with, more and more technologies and sensors and things that are refining them, which may be able to give them really good measurements in future. But at this present time, it is still very difficult to measure black holes. That said, there is enough evidence there that they exist, even though you can't see them. And that's something which is essentially physical. It is within the realm of the scientific inquiry. But it is difficult to measure. What about things which are on a different plane of existence? I mean, even scientists talk about like parallel universes, which may be existing side beside our own. This comes into string theory. There might be, in a slightly different frequency, another universe right here, right now. There could be another version of me sitting next to me doing something. But I can't see them. I can't experience them. I can't, I have no knowledge of that. But according to string theory, it's possible. It may well be the case. That's actually within science. But at the same time, there's a heck of a lot of belief involved in that too. Even though they've arrived at this through an analytical process and study. And so Mawlana is saying if they cannot see something, they deny it. It is the greatest stupidity to deny something which you cannot see. Positive knowledge can only find a drop in the ocean of existing knowledge. Compared to the existing reality, you know nothing. You have to find everything in books. This is the lowest level of knowledge. A real scholar should be able to speak without having to look into a book, but our brain cannot carry it. A person can sit down and speak about his knowledge, and maybe 1, 2, 3, or 10 books can be written of it. Maybe even 100. But there are millions of books that can deal with positive knowledge. If you don't know them, you can be considered to be ignorant. This only concerns the area of positive knowledge. Within every aspect of positive knowledge, you can find an exit which leads you to the existence of the Lord, Almighty Allah. Every branch of positive knowledge has to reach the point which it will enable people to see the existence of the Creator. We have a saying telling us that every knowledge takes people to know the real source of that knowledge, which comes from the One. For example, if you use mathematics to its limits, it will lead you to the point of recognizing that there is someone who created the whole huge brain of the ocean of mathematics. If you enter physics, it will be like another ocean and take you to the point of asking yourself, where does this huge ocean come from? The knowledge cannot have been brought from the womb of our mothers, or take medicine, such a huge ocean. No one can claim that we have brought all that from the womb of our mother. It has been taken from outside. From where? Our holy book tells us, I have taught first man all this, and you think you have brought all this knowledge from yourself? From where? If he had not given it to you, even positive knowledge, from where would you have brought it? It is such an important point, because it shows that our scholars have to be humble. I was thinking on this when penicillin was discovered. It was an accident. Man who discovered it was a great scientist, but he wasn't meant to be growing penicillin in his petri dish. He was growing bacteria. And then in one of the petri dishes, he looks at it and he's, oh, it's ruined. And then he realized that the thing was killing the bacteria. And that was penicillin, from which we get penicillin and from which all of the antibiotics were later derived. That discovery happened by accident. Or was it an accident? Was it not given to him? And that discovery of penicillin saved countless lives in the early 20th century who would surely have died from bacterial infections without antibiotics. But even though they mention in the science class, I mean, I learned this in school, that it was discovered by accident. They don't focus on that, obviously. They focus on scientific method. But there was no scientific method in there because the scientific method was being applied to another experiment, which was ruined by the infestation of penicillium mold in one of the petri dishes. And there are many scientific discoveries which have come about in a similar way. It's not revelation, but it ain't far off. So Mawlana is saying that our scholars have to be humble. They have to realize they have no reason to be proud. If I would ask them to sit down and write what they know, how many books would they be able to fill? Even if they are professors or doctors or whatever, where did they take all that knowledge from? They're all using preserved knowledge, which mankind has been saving for thousands of years. This conflict has to finish in the second millennium. These realities have to become known. It must be made public that knowledge comes as a grant from our Creator and from nowhere else. This is the struggle which religious people have always with people of positive knowledge. And it harms the beliefs of common people who are caught in between. Because, you know, in order to navigate this area, you have to have understanding of the sciences and understanding of religion. If you lack a reasonable grasp of either, then you have an unbalanced perspective. And you can either decry science, which is actually, it's a good thing, it's not a bad thing, or religion. And both of them make great contributions to human society, human civilization, our cultures. So we shouldn't do that. The problem is, while this conflict goes on, it does confuse a lot of people that they don't have a deep knowledge of either the sciences or religion. And people are basically told to believe either by religious people, or although scientists don't use the word believe, essentially ordinary people who don't understand science have to believe either the scientists or the religious people when they're in conflict with each other. So the scientists explain that it's about scientific method, and they're right, you know, that is what science is based upon. And doing experiments and learning and understanding yourself. There's a lot of people in this society, in this world, they don't understand science. So for them, if they take the scientific worldview, it's an act of belief in the scientists. I'm not saying the scientists are wrong on everything. They're not. They're right on a lot of things. But at the same time, it's an act of belief. And of course, that's not what science is supposed to be anyway. And this is what Mawlana Shaykh Nazim is highlighting. And so the conflict continues and people get confused. The church will tell them one thing and the university something else. These two must now come together and admit the existence of heavenly knowledge, which is the seed of our positive knowledge. Every knowledge was first given to our prophets and to holy people. But within our last centuries, Satan has come and separated the two. And that's a good point as well, because, you know, the ancient Egyptians that have been studied a lot, one of the things I noticed is ancient Egyptian religion, it's often termed religion, was actually scientific and religious. It was combined, it was mixed. There was a spiritual or religious dimension to it, and there was a scientific dimension to it. They didn't separate their knowledge into duality like we do in the West and in the modern world today, based on the Western system. So, you know, and yes, within the past couple of centuries, obviously it's become more pronounced, and there are reasons for that, which I'm not going to go into here. When the beliefs of people are injured, our faith will get weaker and weaker, and chaos will increase. First within ourselves, then everywhere else. We can see this world is living in the darkest period so far. It is a chaos which no one is able to stop. No one can create peace on earth, because peace can only be established by peaceful people. Oh, wow, it's kind of obvious, but what a point. No one can create peace on earth, because peace can only be established by peaceful people. And people nowadays are not in peace individually. How can you then ask for peace? If people are not in peace, how can this country be in peace? You cannot have peace within yourself until your beliefs are strong and the connection with your spiritual being is in perfection. Then you'll be in peace. But our physical body is running and imprisoning our spiritual being. So the fight continues between our spiritual being and our material being. We need a new world, and we hope that in the coming century will be the best century. I do not think that the new generation will carry the dirty works and lives of their ancestors into the 21st century. We hope that you youngsters will be careful not to take the misery, evil, and devilish kingdom into the 21st century. This is your responsibility. You must prevent it and put a barrier between good and evil. Give way to goodness and take away badness. Allah bless you and forgive you. Amin. Wise ones. Only peaceful people can create peace. And how poignant when we see what's going on in the world at the moment. Only peaceful people can create peace. You must be at peace with yourself. And then you can study the sciences or whatever you want to study. As long as you have peace within, then you know how to put best use of it. And how to make it a good and beneficial contribution for humanity and for everyone. May Allah bless his soul and raise his station. in paradise. Al-Fatiha. Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahmanir-Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم. Amin. Okay, well, that brings our reflections to an end. Apologies for not doing it yesterday. I just had such a day. Never mind. But I hope you find this beneficial. And if you haven't already and you tuned into these videos for the first time, then don't forget to subscribe to my Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, wherever you've watched this video. And I look forward to seeing you on Monday for Sohbet and Sufi meditation. And have a great weekend. Salam alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May the peace and blessings of God be with you all. Good night.